线上的观众朋友，大家好，我是蓉姐。秦二世时，宰相赵高野心勃勃，日夜盘算着要篡夺皇位。朝中大臣有多少人能听他摆布，有多少人反对他，他心中没底。于是他想了一个办法，准备试一试自己的威信，同时也可以摸清敢于反对他的人。一天上朝时，赵高让人牵来一只鹿，满脸堆笑地对秦二世说：“陛下，我献给您一匹好马。”秦二世一看，心想：这哪里是马，这分明是一只鹿马，便笑着对赵高说：“宰相搞错了，这里一只鹿，你怎么说是马呢？”赵高面不改色地心不跳地说：“请陛下看清楚，这的确是一匹千里马。”秦二世又看了那只鹿，将信将疑地说：“马的头上怎么会长角呢？”赵高一转身，用手指着众大臣，大声说：“陛下如果不信我的话，可以问问众位大臣。”大臣们都被赵高的一派胡言搞得不知所措，私下里嘀咕：这个赵高搞什么名堂？是鹿是马，这不是明摆着吗？当看到赵高脸上露出阴险的笑容，两只眼睛咕噜噜轮流地盯着赵高脸上露出阴险的笑容，两只眼睛咕噜噜轮流地盯着每个人的时候，大臣们忽然明白了他的用意。一些胆小又有正义感的人都低下头，不敢说话，因为说假话对不起自己的良心，说真话又怕日后被赵高所害。有些正直的人坚持认为是鹿而不是马，还有一些平时就紧跟赵高的奸佞之人，立刻表示拥护赵高的说法，对皇上说：“这却是一匹千里马。”事后，赵高通过各种手段，把那些不顺从自己的正直大臣纷纷治罪，甚至满门抄斩。后来，这个故事被浓缩成“指鹿为马”，用来比喻人刻意颠倒是非。现今也发生这样故事，请看影片《谁偷走他们的青春》。
Taiwan, a magnificent island, hailed by many as a beacon of democracy in a region plagued by non-democratic regimes. Visitors to Taiwan not only appreciate its natural beauties. They visit gardens, museums, and temples, and enjoy a millennia-old Chinese culture. The rich variety of religions present in Taiwan testifies religious liberty is affirmed and protected. Yet, on December 19, 2021, visitors to Taipei noticed thousands of people in the streets, protesting that for 25 years they had not been protected by democracy, and their right to religious liberty had been violated. In the last few years, scholars and human rights activists throughout the world have often heard the name of these protesters. Taiji Men is a menpai, similar to a school of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation. Dr. Hong Taozu, the Grand Master, Zhang Menrun, of Taiji Men, has inherited the wisdom of esoteric Taoism and studied Qigong, martial arts, medicine, yin-yang philosophy, life wisdom, and heart kung fu since a very young age. After martial law was lifted in Taiwan, he started to widely accept disciples, teaching them a path to good health and happiness. There are now 15 Taiji Men academies. Dr. Hong also promoted high-profile initiatives for world peace and brought traditional Taiji Men culture abroad through over 3,000 cultural events and martial arts performances. Dr. Hong has visited more than 100 countries and has become a familiar figure in international peace gatherings and initiatives held at the United Nations. In 2014, Taiji Men was part of a coalition that launched the movement of an era of conscience. The initiative was praised by offices of the United Nations and the heads of state of several countries, with the participation of people in 200 nations, and eventually led the UN to proclaim April 5th as the International Day of Conscience. The bell's sound has also a spiritual significance in many Eastern and Western religions. Dr. Hong designed and supervised the construction of the Bell of World Peace and Love, which was first rung in Singapore in the year 2000. Taiji Men invites world political, cultural, and religious leaders to ring them, making a wish for peace. Dr. Hong devotes a large part of his time to teach Dizzy, similar to disciples, and interview each of them before they are accepted as Dizzy. There is a traditional Taiji Men ceremony after the acceptance. Dizzy show their gratitude to Dr. Hong by giving gifts in the form of the so-called red envelopes to Shifu, Grand Master, as is traditional in Chinese Qigong Menpai. Everybody understands this is part of a personal relation Dizzy have with their Shifu. Several presidents and other high authorities in Taiwan have praised Taiji Men and Dr. Hong for their contribution to the public welfare of Taiwan and for being excellent ambassadors of Chinese culture throughout the world.
Under the Zhangmenren's leadership, Taiji Men has actively participated in international events, raised Taiwan's global visibility. In the future, I also hope that Taiji Men under Dr. Hong's leadership will continue to work with the government that will see Taiwan.
How is it possible that, at the same time, Taiji Men is praised and persecuted? When martial law ended in 1987, religious liberty was officially proclaimed. However, during a long post-authoritarian phase, the ruling party still expected religious organizations to actively support the government. Those who didn't were persecuted. The 1996 repression targeted some of the largest religious movements in Taiwan, including the Buddhist organization Fo Guangshan and Iguan Dao. Notwithstanding its caution in not taking political sides, Taiji Men was also involved in the crackdown, and Dr. Hong was detained together with his wife and two Dizzy. Dr. Hong was falsely and ridiculously accused by a prosecutor who violated the law and abused his authority of raising goblins, a practice totally foreign to Taiji Men. On July 13, 2007, the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court of Taiwan pronounced the final acquittal of Taiji Men defendants, declaring them innocent of all charges. The Supreme Court also declared there was no tax evasion. National compensation for the wrongful detention was given to Dr. Hong and his co-defendants who had been detained. This should have been the end of the Taiji Men case. However, they tried to maintain their tax bills for the years 1991 to 1996, claiming that the money Dr. Hong had received in these years in the red envelopes should not be considered as non-taxable gifts, but as tuition fees for a so-called cram school, a school where pupils receive crash courses, normally in preparation for exams. Different authorities intervened in the controversy, including the Ministry of Education, which has authority on cram schools, and courts of law. All declared that in the Taiji Men case there was no cram school and no tax evasion. For the second time, the Taiji Men case should have ended there, but this did not happen. In 2019, the NTB, in accordance with the ruling of the Supreme Administrative Court and the Taipei High Administrative Court, agreed that tax bills for the years 1991 and 1993 to 1996 should be corrected to zero, but maintained the tax bill for 1992, including penalties. Logically, this did not make sense, as the content of the red envelopes in 1992 was not different from the other years. In this case, the verdict of the criminal section of the Supreme Court of 2007 that found Dr. Hong and Taiji Men not guilty of tax evasion. Nonetheless, the NTB refused to cancel the tax bill for 1992. On May 5 and July 23, 2020, the Taipei High Administrative Court wrote twice to the NTB for the central area, asking them to treat 1992 as the other years were treated. This also was to no avail. In August 2020, land belonging to Dr. Hong that had been seized was auctioned by the National Enforcement Agency, then confiscated after 2 auctions were not successful. This property was important for Taiji Men, which planned to build a center for self-cultivation on what they consider a sacred land. Hence the protests, which also targeted what Taiji Men and others perceived as the unfairness of the Taiwanese tax system in general and the immoral system of bonuses. Why did the Taiji Men case last longer with respect to other groups that had been involved in the 1996 crackdown on spiritual movements, and in fact is still not solved after more than 25 years? One answer is that Taiji Men refused to compromise with the NTB. By settling, they would have admitted that they had been guilty of tax evasion, something that is both against their principles and factual truth. Ultimately, the Taiji Men cases and protests are not about taxes or money. They are about freedom of religion or belief. Taiji Men was not raided in 1996 and persecuted ever since, because the authorities really suspected it was guilty of tax evasion. In fact, in 2021, a sensational testimony emerged proving that those who started the Taiji Men case knew that the accusation of tax evasion was fabricated. In a video, the late tax collector Shi Yusheng was heard confessing that prosecutor Ho Quan-jen, the main instigator of the persecution of Taiji Men, told him to lie to fabricate a false tax case against Dr. Hong and the movement. Why was the lie fabricated? The root cause was the attempt to destroy a spiritual movement that taught its disciples to think with their own heads. Authoritarian bureaucrats and corrupt officials are always afraid of those who dare think independently and follow their own conscience. This is also why thousands in the world admire and respect Dr. Hong and Taiji Men. This is why hundreds of scholars and human rights activists support the Taiji Men cause. This is why the case of Taiji Men was repeatedly denounced in international forums, including at the United Nations.
In June 2021, we brought to attention to the Human Rights Council the case of the Taiji Men. We denounced how the tax weapon was used to harm Taiji Men. In September, at the 88th Human Rights Council session, we renewed our appeal for Taiji Men. This time, we highlighted the confiscation of this Taiji Men place of worship by the Taiwanese government.
Those in Taiwan who believe this protest will simply go away with the passing of time are wrong. Protests have now lasted for more than 25 years. As the title of a book about the case suggests, the youth of more than one generation has been stolen, as they had to spend their best years asking time and again for a justice denied. But they did not give up. Generation after generation of Taiji Men will continue to fight until the case is solved. More and more in the world will support them. In this sense, we are all Taiji Men.
气功武术修行团体太极门被侯宽仁检察官与国税局指鹿为马，以补习班强加课税，修行预定地2次遭违法拍卖不成，被直接收归国有，民主人权被践踏，诉诸公理的无力，更让人心生绝望。台湾历经近40年的戒严时期，在民主前辈努力下，确定人权立国的方向。2009年将国际人权2公约国内法化。2022年5月，国际人权专家第3度来台审查2公约国家报告。台湾人权大步走人吗？2022年2公约第3次国家报告国际审查会议，台湾的酷刑与宗教信仰自由迫害。
The recommendation of the committee back in 2017 was that the covenants be deemed part of the Constitution of Taiwan, that they be given a constitutional position. which would mean, I presume, that they would prevail over any domestic legislation that is incompatible with that. And it seems clear that's not what has happened.
Because Taiwan cannot use this international complaint system, international communications. Yeah? If the domestic court does not solve, the victims in other countries, if they ratify optional protocol, they can still file individual communications to the Human Rights Committee or Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. But Taiwan cannot do that.
But there is no clear specific crime in the domestic criminal code of Taiwan, irrespective of whether the torture leads to death or injuries. This is not the important point. The important point is the deliberate infliction of severe pain or suffering on a powerless person. That's what makes torture such a terrible crime. So what prevents or what has prevented so far the government to implement our recommendations in the first and in the second, and now also with our list of issues? On the reply to the second list of questions, then it was said, as of March 29, 2022, a total of 410 applications have been accepted, of which 2 were further processed and transferred to the disciplinary court trial. So 410 applications, only 2 were further processed, and then not to a criminal court, but to the disciplinary court. So there is something fundamentally missing, wrong, and that I think there is no independent authority to investigate and prosecute torture. Otherwise, I cannot imagine why there are no consequences for torture that is obviously happening. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many complaints about torture.
Freedom of religion. Well, there's nothing much from the government, and also nothing much also from so far that we have received. So if there's any burning issue that we really need to put on the recommendation, I think it's time to hear, I think, from our friends here.
Yes. Okay, anything on freedom of religion that you would like to add, please?
太极门案其实是一个非常严重的宗教信仰自由迫害案件。这一个案件 ，European Times 就是欧洲这边的时报杂志，对于其实有非常多的国际专家学者在讨论。寒冬杂志，它光是1年多就已经有100多位的国际学者专家针对这个案件做评论。他们没有罪，也跟税都没有关系，但是他们的土地却被政府以课税、以这个歧视为理由来没收他们的土地。
我们宗教人权公约的规定，必须要有法律依据，才可以限制宗教的活动的自由。但是我们台湾目前的状况是，透过行政命令，没有法律的依据，没有法律的授权，就来剥夺、限制人民的宗教活动自由。
The judge may have taken part to a considerable extent, for instance, in the investigation. Also may he, so to say, have, during the investigation, made expressions which could be understood in the sense that he had already formed an idea of how the case should be decided. I recall, I think we all have heard of the old well-known maxim that's saying justice must not only be done, justice must also be seen to be done. This is a question of confidentiality of the public in the way the legal system is functioning. So my question would be whether the present situation under Taiwanese law, where impartiality usually only comes up as issues where the judge has made a decision, is too narrow.
I have always asked how Taiwan thinks about what Taiwan thinks about the Universal Declaration on Human Rights in particular, and about human rights education in general. So mind you, this is now the third time that I have been here. On the average, that's what? At least 10 years, right? From the first time that I came here. And up to now, I feel like a failure, and you know why? Nobody seems to be interested in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Without the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, there would be no International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, nor would there be a covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights, and all the others that followed after.
The two covenants have been in force in Taiwan for 13 years. However, they simply exist in name. Human rights are not being respected in government agencies. Over the years, the international reviewers' concluding observations and recommendations have not been taken seriously. The two covenants have yet to achieve the same power of the Constitution of Taiwan and basic human rights guaranteed by the Constitution, such as the right to effective remedies, anti-torture, and freedom of religion and belief, have not been implemented.
两公约在台湾实行13年，却是徒具表现的空壳，人权观念并未落实于政府机关。历年国际审查委员所提出结论性意见，多未受重视。两公约位阶未及宪法所保障的宗教信仰自由权利之有效救济，反酷刑等基本人权仍未落实。宗教信仰自由、言论自由是基本人权，不可剥夺。法国哲学家卢梭提倡天赋人权，历史证明天赋人权要靠不断争取奋斗才能得到。节目最后观看法国因税强大，也因税而败亡影片，谢谢大家。
法国因税强大，也因税而败亡。17世纪，法国有位奇才，名叫科尔贝。1661年，法王路易14拔擢他为助理。上任后，随即揭发财政部部长贪污，不仅大快人心，而他所建立的公平赋税制度，着重严惩贪腐，并维持预算平衡，使得法国不滥权课税，而拥有足够的税收。之后，科尔贝被任命为海军大臣，以雄厚财力建立强大海军，让法国由跨洋贸易获得大量财富，而成为海权时代的第一强权。可惜，路易14为巩固王权，浩劫国力，不断对外侵略，又把预算的一半拿来兴建奢华的凡尔赛宫，还给教会极大经济特权，甚至让贵族轮流出任高阶公职和神职，形成特权阶级。科尔贝对此大力反对，但他的谏言却未获采用，最后抑郁而终。而他建立的预算平衡制度、廉能文官团队，以及他所倡导的征税的艺术，在于把最多鹅毛又听到最少的鹅哀嚎，这个课税理念则被破坏无疑，导致政府连年超支，刚好成为税官滥权征税的借口。但因征得的税款大都被贪官中饱私囊，导致国债暴增，沉重的债务完全由平民负担，而免税的教会、官员及贵族的财产却越来越多，国内资金被迫出走到英国。长期下来，民怨沸腾，愤怒的群众终于在1789年冲进巴士底监狱，爆发法国大革命。当时的君王路易16夫妇也被送上断头台。此后，法国动荡近100年， 导致国力耗损殆尽，最终在1870年普法战争中惨败，而拿破仑3世被俘，巴黎惨遭沦陷，昔日欧洲第一强权濒临亡国。税可强国，亦可亡国。赋税公平，民心归顺，收支平衡，方能永续。严惩贪腐，国家富强。